Dr. Song, you can unmute yourself and we will get started. So dear friends, from wherever you are joining us, welcome to tonight's webinar presented by Bridge to Success Educational Program. Our presenter tonight is Dr. Farhad Sabetan, and the topic of his presentation will be Marriage, a Fortress for Well-Being. To access all our webinars, recorded webinars, as well as courses, please visit bridgetosuccessprogram.org. At this time, I would like to introduce our dear speaker. Dr. Farhad Sabetan received his master's degree in economics from California State University, East Bay in 1980, and his PhD in economics from the University of California, Davis in 1990. He completed a master's degree in marriage and family therapy at Touro University worldwide. His professional career has been primarily in the areas of economics of energy, telecommunications, and health, along with his teaching career in economics. He has testified for the California Public Utilities Commission on various issues in energy and telecommunications as an expert witness. He has also been interviewed by ABC, NBC, and Fox local news channels on economic issues. However, his additional career focused on supporting human rights and counseling individuals and families. Dr. Sabetan is one of the spokespersons of the Baha'i international community and has had numerous interviews concerning the violation of the rights of the Baha'is and other minorities with the Persian and non-Persian media, such as BBC Persian, Iran International, Voice of American, Persian, Radio Farda, Radio France, Deutsche Welle, Kayhan of London, and many others. He is currently practicing counseling and teaching a variety of courses in economics at California State University, East Bay, including international economics, environmental economics, health economics, managerial economics, and other economic courses. Dr. Sabetan is also a volunteer professor at Baha'i Institute of Higher Education, an informal university environment, teaching economics to Baha'is who are deprived of their right to education. With this introduction, please let us welcome Dr. Sabetan to our webinar tonight. And I am sure that it's going to be a wonderful presentation by him, as he's a wonderful speaker. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that kind introduction. It is an absolute pleasure for me to be here with you tonight and seeing you all and talking about an important topic which we usually don't hear so much from in terms of what a healthy marriage is, which in my opinion is a fortress for well-being. So we're going to be discussing that tonight, and I will speak for, I don't know, maybe half an hour. I don't want to talk too much, and I'd like to focus the rest of the presentation interactively with your questions, comments, contributions. So first of all, the idea of marriage interested me. I've been married myself for 40 years and I have 3 children. And it is really the foundation of society. When we talk about a family, from a sociological point of view, a family is the very pillar of any kind of a society. And when the relationship between couples and in families, when that relationship, excuse me, is dysfunctional, that has impacts on society. And of course, how society operates also has an impact on family. So there's this mutual relationship. So I don't want to get into problems in marriage. I'd like to maybe focus primarily on what a healthy marriage could be, what it looks like. And of course, there are all kinds of different theories and ideas about this, and I only present mine, which is based on my studies as a marriage and family therapist and inspired by principles of the Baha'i faith as well. So essentially, when we think about marriage, what I have in mind is to form a relationship that creates novelty. So what do I mean by that? When we actually look at everything that we observe, when you look at the world of existence from small atoms to the large galaxies and everything that exists, essentially we see that this existence is the result of a relationship. In other words, it's a relationship between certain elements that come together that create something that's different. So throughout tonight's presentation, I'm going to use one of these elements, which is a life-giving element, that's water. So how is water created? It is the coming together of hydrogen and oxygen in a very specific proportion. For example, 2 molecules of hydrogen and 1 molecule of oxygen. When they come together, when they bond together under certain specific circumstances, then they give rise to a creative novelty, which we call water. Now, oxygen has its own properties, hydrogen has its own properties, but when they combine and bind together, then they create water, which is something very different than hydrogen and oxygen isolated. Marriage is no exception to this universal rule. The universal rule being relationships and connections, and marriage is just one of them. And the idea of a marriage is for a man or a woman, or for partners basically, to get together and form a commitment to have this relationship and create what we call a family. And once a family is created, it has properties that transcend the characteristics of either one of the individual members of the family. So this relationship that is created within family has to have certain qualities, just like the proportionality between hydrogen and oxygen that creates water. There has to be some proportionality of the characteristics of the individuals in a marital relationship in order for that marriage to survive and to flourish into something much more than what it is. So among the things that create this bond between husband and wife in a marital relationship is mutual respect, commitment. Basically, we're talking about what creates a well-being. In other words, what are those fundamental nutrients for personal growth and well-being? And I'm going to discuss this in some detail later on. But the marriage essentially is created as a result of the synergy between the partners and an interdependence of the partners. So this idea that I am going to marry someone creates a sense of interdependency, not dependency, but interdependency. Because again, when we look at society at large, we see that each one of us is actually interdependent with someone else. In other words, the moment you wake up and you want to have breakfast, whatever it is that you're eating has been made by some others, whether it's cereal, whether it's a toast, whether it's eggs. Essentially, it has been prepared by somebody else that you bought. So you are actually interdependent with those others that provide you with the breakfast. And what is your role? Interdependent means that they're also depending on you. They're depending on you to actually go and work and earn money to pay for everything that you're buying. So that economic interdependence is actually an essential element of having a society. When we engage in marriage, it is that type of interdependence and synergy that I'm talking about. So some of in marriage and family therapy, there are three very essential elements that hold marriage together. In other words, this is one of our fundamental needs. According to Maslow, of course, I'm sure some of you know about the Maslow's hierarchy of needs, that we basically have certain very basic physiological needs. We have certain emotional needs. We have certain social needs. But as individuals, part of our need above and beyond the physiological needs, such as eating, drinking, sleeping, and all that, when we get to the emotional needs that in one sense are even probably more important than the physiological needs, are three things: love, safety, and belonging. These three elements, from the moment that we are born as a child, immediately we want to feel safe as a baby. We want to love and attach, and we want to belong. We want to belong, to be part of family. That's why as soon as a baby is born, they form a specific sense of attachment. And if that attachment is a healthy attachment, the child will grow to a wonderful human being, they flourish. But unfortunately, when that attachment is mixed with anxiety and worries and lack of safety, then there are later that child will encounter certain disorders. Okay, so love, safety, and belonging are those fundamental nutrients that has to exist in order for a marriage to belong, to grow. And what these are, of course, the love is a sense of devotion and dedication and commitment. Safety means that I have to be very safe in the relationship to be able to express my needs and also create a safe environment for my partner to be able to express their needs. Okay. And belonging is part of us belonging to that family, and at a larger scale, belonging to a community, and at a larger scale, belonging to a society. In other words, having a sense of attachment to a larger things, to a larger ideal. So love, safety, and belonging are the three elements of a healthy marriage. And another aspect of marriage that uh, contributes to growth of a marriage is very much like water, is essentially flexibility. Water that was created from hydrogen, oxygen, has the capability of existing in different states. For example, water can be in solid form, liquid form, or gas. So for example, you have ice, you have water that we drink. I have some water right here that I'm going to drink, and the water could be a vapor. So all of them are essentially the same water, but in different forms. And each one of these forms depends on the environment and the conditions that require that level of flexibility. Marriage is the same thing. In other words, flexibility in marriage sometimes requires the parents, for example, to be rather disciplined and discipline their children's education without any kind of a punishment, healthy discipline with flexibility. Sometimes it requires a lot of flexibility require, for example, like a water vapor, and sometimes it's liquid, fluid, meaning that it lends itself to adapt to different situations. So when, as I mentioned, when marriage is formed, then it actually has properties that transcends the specific characteristics of either one of these partners. Okay, and as a result of that, we basically try to use that purpose of the family as a meaningful relationship itself. Let me give you another example. Consider a seed, okay? When you plant a seed, let's say an apple seed, it actually combines or binds with the nutrients in the soil, benefits from the water that is given. The gardener comes and waters it, and the sun shines on it, and suddenly that seed becomes a very small, beautiful sapling. And that sapling is going to grow again through the care of a gardener, nutrients from the soil, the sunshine and all that. It grows to become a tree. And then when it becomes a tree, it actually gives more apples. Okay. Now, what's the relationship between that tree and the seed? You know, the seed had its own certain characteristics, but its objective was not to remain a seed, but the objective was to actually become a tree that gives many, many more seeds. But in order to do that, it had to come out of the cocoon of being a seed in order to flourish into a tree. So marriage is pretty much the same thing. In order for the family to grow and develop, the husband and wife should at times give up some of their individual characteristics so that they can contribute to something bigger, something more meaningful, something that is the object of that marriage. When I say these, I am very mindful of the importance of individuality as well. I'm not talking about a person losing his or her identity in marriage, but I'm talking about keeping one's identity, however, developing the ability and capacity to actually contribute to the needs of the family, even if at times it means sacrificing their own needs. Although a healthy marriage does not have to actually lead to that sacrifice, there can be ways that the needs of everyone can be met. In fact, I assert that once the needs of the entire family is met, then the needs of each individual is met. But if each individual, each partner insists on their own individuality and their own importance, such as in patriarchal families where the head of the household is the master and everybody else is like a slave, then that type of marriage does not have much of a chance of survival. Okay. Finally, a marriage requires maintenance. In other words, just like any other organism that requires care and safety and the characteristics I mentioned, marriage is like that. Otherwise, if we don't take care of the water becomes polluted. As was mentioned, one of the courses I teach is environmental economics. And in the environment, we basically have nature and we pollute the nature with external effluents, external pollution that makes life difficult for everybody else. And once that water is polluted, it actually loses its purity that is life-giving. The same thing with marriage, okay? So neglect, lack of mutual support, lack of communication, lack of intimacy, these are the type of things that actually pollute the marriage. And healthy communication, healthy intimacy, collaboration and cooperation, mutual support for each other. These are the type of things that actually maintain and flourish marriage. Okay, so I have mm, basically summarized these everything that I've taught into 4 fundamental elements in a marital relationship. And these 4 elements are basically part of what I call intention and attention. Okay. So what does that mean? The first element is what I refer to as transformation. What that means is that if I want to get married, in order for everything that I just discussed to actually come to fruition, I need to develop the attitude and intention to change. If I insist of remaining who I am and not willing to give an inch, that marriage is not likely to survive. That's all about transformation. You know, from the moment we are born, we are in the process of transformation. We are changing. Every single minute we're changing. Our innate identity remains the same, but we go through the phases of being an infant, being a toddler, being a preschool students, and then growing to high school, university, so it's the same person, but that person goes through transformation. That transformation requires flexibility and having the intention of exposing yourself to change and not resisting the change. Of course, we're talking about healthy change. So that intention is the first prerequisite of getting married. In other words, if I want to get into a marital relationship, I want to make sure that there is an understanding that we're both going to have to change based on certain parameters to actually create that novelty that I was referring to in the beginning. In other words, oxygen has to, or hydrogen has to give one of those atoms, because there's 2, to bind with the atom of oxygen. It has to give it up in order for the water to happen. If oxygen says no, if hydrogen says no, I'm going to keep all my molecules, you're never going to have water. So that's transformation. The other 3 are what I call attention. By attention, I mean being present and attending in the marriage. Okay. The first one is truthfulness, honesty. A marriage that is not founded in honesty is doomed to fail. Okay. And honesty means that I would express my vulnerabilities, my joy, my weaknesses, what makes me happy, what does not make me happy, in an honest and truthful way with my partner. Okay. If that does not happen, then that relationship is not stable. The third element, which is part of being present, is trustworthiness. In other words, the partners will have to trust each other that what they hear from the other partner, that truth that I've mentioned, is actually what they're talking about. They're not stonewalling, they're not deceiving each other, but they trust that they are going to abide by the commitment that they have made to stay in marriage. And the fourth one is, of course, togetherness, that the couple basically recognize that after marriage, they are now one unit, that one unit is what is most important. Obviously, they're going to need their own moment of solitude. And I make a distinction between solitude and loneliness. We as human beings avoid loneliness. We are not isolated beings. We need to be in a community. We need to be in a relationship to survive. But at times, we also need solitude. And by solitude, I mean relating to ourselves. Okay. So marriage is one relationship, but relating to myself is another relationship. Relating to society is another relationship. Relating to a transcendent, meaningful being, sometimes God, or however, whatever else you may want to think about it, is another form of a relationship. And all of this is part of togetherness. So in marriage, we have to attend and be present in these areas. Unfortunately, sometimes, you know, the husband may not be present, the wife may not be present. You know, there's like a football game, and the husband says, I want to watch my football, don't bother me. Or, you know, the wife says, I want to go do X, Y, and Z. I want to go shopping. I want to go see my friend. And the question is, while the entertainment and shopping, of course, is well respected, but if that becomes a pattern at the expense of ignoring your partner, then we're not present. Being present, being attentive, means that when I am communicating with my partner, at that moment, I am totally theirs. I am listening with all my being. When my partner is talking, my mind is not somewhere else. My mind is not about, oh my God, did I pay the PG&E bill or not? You know, what am I supposed to do for work? Did I do what I need to do for work tomorrow? No. For that moment, I am going to be there present with my partner and see what my partner is thinking and what my partner is feeling. So thoughts and feelings are part of this very deep, attentive communication. And attending, of course, means empathy. So if my partner is not feeling well, I want to be present and capture that moment and be present and be there for my partner. If she's not feeling well, I want to be there, even if I cannot help with reducing the pain, but at least I can have a soothing presence to help my partner at least reduce that pain to some degree. Okay, so intention is the first one, the intention to want to change, and truthfulness, trustworthiness, and togetherness are part of being attentive and being present in marriage. Now, some of the things that unfortunately do not help with having a healthy, wholesome, flourishing marriage. One of them is dependency versus interdependency. Okay. Dependency means that I actually become dependent on my partner and I cannot actually do anything by myself. I've had couples as clients where one couple is alcoholic and depends on the husband, or the husband is alcoholic, depends on the wife to go and provide alcohol. And they're not willing to change. So they're not abiding by transformation rule and they're actually dependent. Interdependency means we recognize that we can actually have a division of labor. We can actually work together in what we are best at. And doing that, we are essentially helping the family flourish. So we want to make sure that we avoid dependency and cultivate interdependency. The second thing that ruins marriages is a sense of domination. So when one partner dominates the other partner, basically the idea of collaboration and cooperation goes out of the window. Okay. And what I mean by domination is not necessarily, of course, that includes that. I'm talking about domestic violence and all of that. That's definitely a form of it. But even more subtle than that is when we deny our partner the choices that they can make. Denial of choice is a form of domination. In other words, when I have a partner, I have to respect the partner's wanting to make a choice. I can make a suggestions about what I think about that choice, but ultimately, my partner is the one who has to make that decision. And by respecting the choices, I'm actually respecting the right as a human being. Because in the final analysis, what defines us as human beings, separate from other forms of existence, is the capacity to choose, which we call freedom or liberty. Okay? So I need to be able to respect the liberty or the choices of my partner, and it has to be mutual. And we can discuss those choices and figure out at given times what are some of the best choices that can be made. And that comes through communication, through setting objectives, and so on. Another aspect of marriage that could potentially damage the marriage is when there are demands, when one partner demands the other partner, I want you to do this. Sometimes this comes as a result of a traditional norms that have been set. The job of the woman is to wash dishes. Therefore, I demand that she wash dishes. The job of the husband is to bring home the bacon. Okay, therefore, there's a demand that's. Now, what we could actually change that to, transform that to, is to requests. In other words, I won't demand that my wife makes dinner when I arrive home. I will make a request. Is it possible that when I get home, because of work and everything, we could have dinner ready? And that is very intimately related for that choice. You give the partner the choice to see if they don't, then I'm gonna have to figure out, okay, how am I going to fix dinner or have dinner or whatnot? Okay, of course, all of these, as I mentioned, are subject to communication and understanding. Another thing that unfortunately ruins marriages are blame and shame. When I fail in something, I blame my partner. Okay. I am mad at something and say, you are making me mad. All right. Whereas your partner is not making anybody anything. I am the one who is the owner of my own feeling. I'm the one who's accountable for how I feel. There are triggers out there. Yes, somebody may talk to me in a loud voice, and then I become angry. But I have the choice. Remember the existence of choice. I can also have the choice of getting up and leaving the room without getting angry. So one of the things that I advise couples is that when one person starts shouting, the other partner can tell them, hey, honey, when you're shouting, I cannot hear you. Meaning that even though I can hear you physically, but I cannot hear what's going on. So let's tone it down and see if we can have a conversation about what's going on. So blame and shame are what we call saboteurs, the things that really sabotage the marriage. Another thing is making judgments. Of course, judgment is also part of blame and shame, but sometimes we see partners demeaning each other, putting down, oh, my wife made some food that God help us with that food. This kind of judgment, this kind of not recognizing the value of the partner could also be very damaging. Of course, I'm going through this list very quickly, and there's each one of these requires some good time to discuss. Another thing is an all or nothing attitude. In other words, everything is black and white. Okay. And we don't really live in a black and white world. Everything is in a spectrum. Okay. And that's why we see that arguments happen. The husband tells wife, you're wrong. And then she tells him, no, you're wrong. Because They are looking at perspective in terms of things that are right and things that are wrong. And what is right and what's wrong is basically their own value system or their own understanding of what is right and what's wrong. And they have two different criteria for right and wrong, and then they go at it. So another example of all or nothing, you always do this to me. You never say you love me. See, this always, never, because it's either this or that. Okay. And things are not like that. Things are always within a spectrum. You say, for example, I could say, I have not heard you say, I love you lately. Okay. That is more reasonable. But when you say you never say you love me, I'm pretty sure that at least once the person, maybe during dating, has said, I love you. Finally, is some areas that unfortunately makes marriage to not be wholesome is expectations versus agreements. These expectations of roles, which I briefly also mentioned earlier, is something that may not work out, especially when the partners are from different cultures or different religious backgrounds. All right. So, for example, in some culture, the man may expect to be respected. And by respected, that means that when he comes home, the wife, children, they come and say hello, salam, how are you? Pay their respect. And if that doesn't happen, the husband is going to get mad. Okay. Expectation is assignment of roles. The mother's job is to take care of the household. The father's role is to work outside. So when these expectations form and they're not communicated, then we have problems. We could talk about our expectations and see how we can come to an agreement about those expectations and then commit to those agreements. That makes a healthy family. So, in general, in marriage, there's always a give and take. There's got to be, just like the two molecules of hydrogen, that hydrogen has to give one of it up. In marriage, we also have to be flexible and give up certain tendencies of narcissism, selfishness, individualism in order for that family to survive.